Okay, so introduction time. This is the webinar on advanced archive and backup with Archiware P5, Symply LTO, and Nebula Cloud. And there are three people on this webinar. So hi everybody, this is David Fox from Archiware. I'm in the UK, and with me today, I'm delighted to have Nick from Symply.
Hello.
EMEA. Hi Nick, how you doing?
Hi there. Very well, thanks. Pleasure to be here.
Good. And introducing Alex Grossman, also from Symply in the US. Hi, Alex.
Hi, David. Hi, everyone. Great to be here, and I hope we have a great webinar today.
Yeah, looking forward to it. A little bit of housekeeping first. We're really keen on taking your questions. We've also got a poll for you later. So please type any questions into the questions box, and we've got 10 minutes at the end of the webinar where we'll go through all of those and give you really intelligent answers. And this session's going to be recorded, edited a little, and published on YouTube, plus maybe some other places. We'll send you links to the slide deck and the recording within the next couple of days. So let's begin with the content that we're going to go through. So we're basically splitting this into 4 quarters, approximately 40 minutes, beginning with an overview of the Symply products. Plus, Nick has some products that you will have just seen in front of him, so he's going to give us some physical demo of them. Then we'll have an overview of the Archiware P5 products from me. That'll be focused around the archive product mostly. Then I will show you some web browser interfaces of how to do archive and backup to tape and cloud. And then we'll wrap up with those questions at the end. So let's begin. Over to you, Alex, with SymplyFirst. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. So we wanted to start today with talking about SymplyFirst. This is a new product line for Symply. Those of you who know Symply, those of you who are our customers and have used our products before, you know, Symply is a company. We've been around over 5 years now, and we have a number of products out there, but SymplyFirst is really a revolutionary product line for us. It's a high-performance set of solutions specifically designed for media and entertainment and enterprise customers. David, let's go to the next slide if we can.
Sure. There we go.
I want to talk a little bit about SymplyFirst. We're not going to bore you with too many slides. We're going to show you some live stuff and some demos, so I think you'll like it. But when we talk about SymplyFirst, it's really a true product family. What we tried to do was look at the essential products that people needed and to solve some of the issues that every user faces when you're on set, when you're in post-production, and when you're doing content archiving. We realized that some of those challenges of having a set of products that you need for essential storage were just either expensive, difficult to find, difficult to use, or sometimes they didn't work really well together. So we went to our users and we asked them, what are you really looking for? I mean, we have a lot of experience. If you look at the combined experience of hundreds of years of people in the media and entertainment business in our company, or you look at the last 25 years that we really spent in this market, we wanted to make sure that we put the feature sets in place that people really needed, but we also wanted to base those on very solid technology. And so we were able to actually take the SymplyFirst line and design it looking at what users wanted and what they told us they didn't like in other solutions. Things like an all-metal alloy enclosure, it's lighter, it's an aluminum alloy, so it's lighter, it increases the reliability of the product, and it eliminates the plastic waste that all of us are worried about. We're trying to be ecology friendly, but it also has a good feel. It's just nothing like it. We also said that we wanted to make sure that we added value to every single accessory in the line, and as Nick takes us through this, you're going to see a lot of that. The other thing we needed was we knew that people are using these on set, people are using these in a production environment, and basically, and a lot of times people are used to using them remotely. So, they have to be robust, they have to be good, but we have to support them well. Sometimes this will be the first product that someone will use, a user will use, or it may be a little different from some other products. We're going to mainly talk about our LTO and our cloud products, and people require support. So we made a hassle-free 3- and 5-year support program for these with true professionals there at the ready for support. David, let's move on.
Okay.
So the products really cover what we think are essential and what our customers have told us are essential from a storage standpoint when you're in media production. It's really about disk, tape, and cloud. And let's face it, cloud is really part of what everybody does today. Tape is really important still from a backup and archive standpoint, as is cloud. And disk is important just for your day-to-day use. So it breaks up into 4 product categories. Simply Spark, there's a number of different personal and transportable RAID products here. Again, these products, I don't want to talk a lot about them here, but understand that they are lighter weight than other products that are out there, being made of, again, metal alloy. They're also more compact, and they have superior cooling and serviceability built in. So we realize that, you know, there's been a lot of personal RAID products that are out there, but we wanted to build simply better products that perform better than other ones that are out there and offer the features that people want. Made them smaller, more compact, easier to service. That's what people are looking for. The Symply LTO line is extremely extensive, and it's tape-based backup. It's there for backup, it's for archive, and it's for transfer, and it has the latest LTO technology in it. We're one of the only companies that actually, in the LTO market, that works with the manufacturer directly. We don't go through second sources to get these components, and we work with those tape drive manufacturers. So we have a very distinctive working approach, and I think it's made a better product. SymplyNEBULA is our cloud product, and you can say to yourself, there's a lot of cloud products that are out there. There's tier 1, tier 2, a lot of different products, but not a lot of them are media-centric. And so what we tried to do was take the essential pieces that people use when they're working with media and make it easier for media people to do, and we're going to talk a lot about that. And SymplyATOM. SymplyATOM is our PCIe to Thunderbolt, or Thunderbolt to PCIe expansion products. And it's a series of products that we'll be releasing very shortly, and we'll be showing those at NAB. But we think there was a need in the market. I mean, there's a lot of these products that are out there, but there was a need in the market for products that were just built better. And if you come to NAB, we'll tell you all about those. David, let's continue if we can.
Sure.
So we talk about the LTO family, and that's what we're mainly here to talk about today with our partners at Archiware. You know, a great backup and archive solution. But the first thing we notice is how extensive this line is. I mean, realistically, nobody has a line of products that meet every need in media entertainment like Symply does. I mean, we're going to talk about these products in detail for just a couple minutes, but realistically, there's no one out there that has this breadth of products. And the reason is, when we talk to customers, there were needs that they had, and you couldn't meet those with a single product. The compromises were too great. So we didn't want to compromise on the number of products. We also didn't want to compromise on the features. So we did some things that no one else has done. We're not saying that we invented a lot of new technologies here. We packaged them in a much better way to make these products not only affordable, but to make them more suited to customer needs. Let's go to the next slide, David, and we can cover some of that. So if we take a closer look at the products, you're going to notice that we built both desktop and rack optimized solutions. And the reason we did this is that not only for on-set remote use, but people have different needs and different requirements. And one thing you can do in the rack is you can do a very slim version of multiple drives, and you could also have the capabilities of getting it away from the user. And the tools, you know, tapes themselves are noisier than disks on your desktop. Although I will say that the Symply line of products with our enclosure technology has superior cooling, which is quieter than anyone on the market that we've tested. And also, we wanted to make it a lot easier from a technology standpoint. We got rid of those external bricks that a lot of these products have. We could never understand why you would have that. If you've ever used an external brick product, you know what I'm talking about. You're going to lose it, right? So putting an internal power supply quiets it down. We use a single fan, very large, runs slower, keeps it cooler, but doesn't have a problem. We also had on the SymplyPRO products the ability to have simultaneous connections between Thunderbolt and SAS. This is great when you're working with Macs and Windows systems and you have to move between them. And that's true on the rack as well. So if you have a number of servers that are in there, Mac and Windows, you can simultaneously connect to these. Little secret as well is if you have a SAS-based system, you can port it back through Thunderbolt. So, and we can tell you all about that. The other thing that I think that's really important is that when you look at the drives themselves, the tape mechanisms are in full height and half height, and we have both configurations. And Nick's going to drive us through and tell us the advantages of that, and also a lot of the technology we put around not only serviceability, but expandability and upgradability in these. And with that, David, can we turn it over to Nick?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. So thanks very much, Alex, for running through the start of that. What we've got here, as you can see, is we've just got 4 of our kind of key products. Obviously, as Alex was alluding to, we've got a very large line, you know, probably the most extensive in the market, and obviously all of those details on our website. But we've just picked a few key ones here, and we're just going to delve in and talk a little bit more about what Alex was saying about design and functionality. So we'll start with this one here. This is our Symply DIT LTO. So you can see it's a half-height drive enclosure with 2 reader slots, our DIT slots. And these DIT slots will natively take one of these, which is a Atomos master caddy. So any of the master caddies coming off your Atomos equipment can be immediately docked in here. And by docking them, we're passing them through the Thunderbolt system to the Mac or Windows host. And of course, we also recognize that there's a lot of people out there just with standard SSDs, and we provide this tray mechanism that comes with the DIT and allows you just to simply insert any standard 2.5-inch SSD straight into the unit, and again, mounted on your desktop. So this could have sort of camera footage on it, or they could just be scratch discs that you're using for editing, as opposed to buying kind of Thunderbolt enclosures. You can just use these systems with 2.5-inch SSDs in them. I think being sort of having a bit of an engineering background, the kind of rear of the system is where we get a little bit more interesting, and you'll see this across the product line, but let's just focus on the DIT for a moment. You can see here that we've got our 2 Thunderbolt ports, they're Thunderbolt 3, one of which provides device charging. So you can charge your laptop. So, you know, I often, when I have these out on my desk, I've got my laptop plugged in here, and I'm pairing my laptop from the drive. You can also notice, as Alex was alluding to, we have a couple of SAS ports. So we have this port, which is our SAS in. Now that allows you to connect to any standard SAS host adapter. So be it on a Windows, Mac, or Linux workstation or server, you can use that. We also have this SAS port here, which is our SAS expansion port. And this, as Alex alluded to, you can use to connect to any other SAS device. Now that might be we'd hope it'd be another Symply product, a Symply SAS tape drive, but it could be anybody's SAS tape drive. It could be a SAS array, or indeed it could be a SAS autoloader or library. So moving on, let's have a look at the next slides up on this.
If I can just interrupt there,
Sure.
Nick, I was just going to say, linking that device back to P5. What's nice about using that with P5 is that you can archive directly from the drives that you've got slotted into the top of the device, the LTO. So if you're on set, you've got a camera card in there, and you want to take a copy of that to some safe storage, you could either use us to replicate to an SSD in the other slot, or you could archive directly to the tape drive, all using the Thunderbolt 3 interface for everything. So that's all I had to say.
Absolutely, you can use it to do the sort of disk to tape, for example. So you could make sure you've got 2 copies on an SSD or spinning disks, and another copy.
There's a lot of possibilities with those 3 devices. Really flexible. So moving on, we've got its kind of bigger brother here, which is our XTH. So as you see, it's got 2 drives in it. I'll just quickly show you the reverse of the chassis, just to show you that all these interfaces, as you'll see, they're common across the range. But as we see at the front, we've got 2 drive mechanisms in here. It ships initially just with 1 drive and a blank bezel here, but you can order a second drive at the time of purchase, or obviously you can upgrade and add a second drive at a later date. The typical workflows that this will be using for, as David will show you maybe in his demo, I'll talk about, is the ability to write 2 copies of your data simultaneously across these 2 drives, or for a workflow where you may have older LTO tapes. Let's say you've got LTO 5 or 6 tapes that you want to migrate to sort of LTO 8 or LTO 9. You could have an LTO 7 drive in here, which will read back to LTO 5, and you could have an LTO 7 drive in here that could read back to LTO 5, and an LTO 9 drive in here to transfer all that media
from your legacy tapes onto your kind of more modern, higher capacity tapes.
Yeah, and you can configure that workflow directly within P5. So you can pick a load of LTO5 tapes, for example, and say migrate this to my LTO9 pool, and we'll just do it all. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, the keen-eyed among you may have noticed these thumb screws on here. So one of the other things that we've really tried to do when designing the range, as Alex indicated, is just make things more simple, hence the name. So what we've done here is we've come up with our simply cableless design. So to remove the drive, you simply undo the screws and you remove the drive in its canister from the device. As you can see, we're just using a standard SAS connections on here to connect to a backplane. We've got a guide rail and a locking pin to make sure that the drive can't go in the wrong way around and can't be sort of put in with force to damage the backplane. That means that servicing your drive or upgrading a drive or swapping drives around is actually incredibly easy. And we use the same technology in our rack system. And if you've ever used some of the other Thunderbolt or SAS devices on the market that have multi-drive, you'll be familiar with the fact that it's not that easy. You've got to take tops off rack devices or open up enclosures to connect power supplies and SAS cables. That's a mess. Why would you do it? So we created Simply Cableless to make that much easier for customers. Moving on, as David spoke about earlier and Alex mentioned, is we have full height tape drive, full height 9 to be precise. So full height tape drives, many of you may not be familiar with that such technology existed. They are really, or have been up until now, the domain of kind of large tape libraries, sort of tens or hundreds of drives, sort of thousands of slots for very large, complex sort of data environments. But the advantage of using a full height LTO9 and enclosure like this is performance. So an LTO9 drive with LTO9 media full height will read at an extra 100 megabytes a second over a counterpart half height LTO9, 8 or 7 drive. So those will all work at 300 megabytes a second. With LTO9 media, the full height drive will write at 400 megabytes a second. So it's an extra 100 megabytes a second. So if you stop and think about how that might add up over the time of a project, over a day, a week, or months of a project, you can suddenly see how you're moving a lot more data onto your tape storage than you would do versus a half height drive. And you can also use LTO8 media in the drive, and you still get a performance boost. So you're getting up to 360 megabytes a second as opposed to 300 megabytes a second. One of the other things that David and I did discuss in previous webinars is reliability. Although obviously both drives are incredibly reliable, the full height drive is obviously built to be more robust. This drive will handle 300,000 load and unload cycles versus this drive that would handle 80,000 load and unload cycles. So, by no means 80,000 cycles is a lot, but obviously you can see the difference between 80,000 and 300,000.
Yeah, it's a considerable difference.
The drives also go much quicker. They spool through the tape quicker, etc. So they're a higher performance drive for those professionals that need to get data off their kind of SSD or hard disk spinning systems quicker. And just lastly, I'll finish off with the rack units. Again, everything that I've kind of shown you here is the same with the rack units. We've got our 1U and 2U with either one or two drives, obviously half height in the 1U, full height in the 2U. And if we just have a look at the back of the units again, you'll see that we have the same layout, that we have our Thunderbolt ports, again, charging. We've got our SAS expansion ports, so you could go to a SAS autoload or a tape library within the same rack and bridge that to Thunderbolt. And then we have our SAS connection here that will allow you to connect to a SAS server. And again, that's common across both units. Also, both units installed with the same cableless design technology, which allows you to be able to swap the drives at will.
So Nick, before you get off of that, we've had this direct relationship with the tape vendor. We've been shipping LTO9 and the full height. I think we're the first ones to ship that in the market. Isn't that true?
Oh, absolutely. There was no one faster to the market. We were first to the market with both half height and full height LTO9. There's very few people knew about the existence of the full height LTO technology, LTO9 technology, until it was announced by the manufacturer. But we'd had those test drives in our labs for 18 months or so. So, we were sort of helping them develop the technology, testing it out in our environment. So you know, that I think speaks volumes to the relationship that we have with the manufacturer of the mechanisms themselves.
And one last thing.
And I guess because actually, oh, sorry, yeah, carry on, Alex.
One last thing. Many people in the U.S. are going to ask this. So you have a bunch of them on the desk right there. How's inventory look? I mean, supply chain. How have we been doing?
Yeah, you know, of course, inventory is tough for a lot of manufacturers. But we've had good stock in, and we're managing our supply chain. You know, we luckily got the heads up from several of our manufacturers that, you know, stock was going to be running short. So, you know, we've made that investment. We've got plenty of these units in stock. And as I said, you know, there's a certain manufacturer that I think announced this week that they were finally going to start shipping half-height 9 drives. You know, we've been shipping them since December. So we've got, you know, plenty of inventory, both for Europe, the US, and Asia. So I was just going to say just one thing for the US market. I know that one thing that comes up in the US, especially for federal, is TAA sort of compliance. So we do have TAA compliant SKUs. You have the option to buy a non-TAA and TAA compliant SKUs. For the TAA compliant SKUs, we ship drive mechanisms that are actually manufactured in Japan. So they're completely TAA compliant.
I think there's a great blog on our website to talk about that. I'd invite everybody to go to simply.com, and you can really learn more about that and just about all the products up there as well. Let's David, if you don't mind, let's go to the next slide if we can, because there's one thing else I wanted to talk about, and that was SymplyATOM. So a lot of people have said, well, one of the things, you have fantastic hardware, you guys have done a lot of work. What do you do from the software side? Well, obviously, you know, partnering with Archiware gives us the ability to do great backup and archive, but tape drives, like anything else, you need to do a certain number of diagnostics and ensure they have good health on tape drives. So one of the best practices is always cleaning your drive. The drive will tell you when it needs to be cleaned. But from the other perspective, is just diagnostics. You know, what's the state of the drive? What's the state of the connectivity? Do I have the right drivers? Is everything there? Is the firmware up to date? All these different things. And so what we've done is we've developed SymplyATOM. It's an advanced diagnostic tool set, and we include it with every single Symply LTO product. So it not only gives you complete LTO diagnostics, it also allows you to do performance testing on both the LTO and the host, so you have an idea that everything is working correctly, and that before you're going to start a large project, you know that everything is going to work well. And of course, working with our support team, we're able to send logs and other information back and forth. We have a portal, a support portal that allows you to do this very easily, and we allow you to upgrade firmware, of course, directed by one of our technicians, but we can do that with a single button. We also needed to provide the basic LTFS functionality, not to replace backup and archive products, but just simply when people are, you know, usually in the field, if they need to just mount a tape, see what's on it, you know the tape's good. So you can format tapes easily. You can mount and unmount tapes. We support all the LTO tapes, and also you can get information about the drive very easily. You can see the interface here. If you want a demo of Atom, of course, you can set that up through one of our salespeople. So that's SymplyATOM. That pretty much covers our LTO product line. If you have any more questions about it, of course, put them in the question area. We're open. We'll take questions at the end, and we'd love to hear from you. So if we can go to Nebula next, David, that would be great.
Okay.
So thank you. So SymplyNEBULA is something that we've been really working on for a long time. We've been talking about the SymplyFirst line, and internally, when the pandemic started, we really, sat down, talked to customers. We had a lot more time on our hands, and we asked for what they needed, and we needed to build a cloud product. We realized that there were some media-centric products out there, but they were either expensive or difficult to use, or in some cases hard to actually purchase. So we said we wanted to fix that with SymplyNEBULA. Let's talk about Nebula's features, David, if we can go to the next slide.
Sure.
So Nebula was designed for content creators. That was just our design from the beginning. We wanted to work with one of the largest data center vendors in the world to be able to provide worldwide capabilities from a cloud standpoint. We have several instances running all around the world, so it's not just that we're centric either in the US or EMEA, and that's really important. Asia, US, EMEA, we're covered throughout. But the biggest thing is that it allows us to spin up and have unlimited capacity for our users in a full S3 compatible, highly secure environment. So we use a modern technology that we think is, and in test, we're about 10 times faster than everybody else that's out there because of our technology, but we also want to make it simple to use. So the one thing we've heard is every tier 1 cloud vendor that's out there has some convoluted billing. You know, I always equate it to my cell phone bill. What are these extra charges that I don't know? And a lot of times you can read through and you're going to say, well, in a post environment, you know, I had to go get that content. You know, 10 of my editors have to get that content constantly. My egress charges are killing me. You know, do I put it up in long-term, let's call it glacial storage, or do I keep it in S3? And I don't know when to move it. I don't know what my times are going to be to get it back. So what we did is we made it, you know, very, very fast. I mean, truly industry-leading retrieval speeds. So when you're doing this, what we tend to call active archive or in a post environment, you're able to get it back very quickly. The other thing we said is there would be no content retrieval charges, zero. Just doesn't cost any more. You pay a simple per month, you know, negotiate the for how much you want, pay the yearly fee per month, and if you go above that, obviously we will charge you, but we have unlimited capacity, so it's really nice. The other thing we realized, and this is something being a worldwide company, and we have offices around the world, and our headquarters are in the UK, and we have a large office in the US, we realized that a lot of our clients will work in multiple facilities, and with multiple facilities, they have a capability of, with our system, of putting content in multiple areas. So for instance, you can have buckets in the US and in our west or east locations, or you can be, say, in London. So a New York, London storage bucket replication is extremely possible and cost effective for us. Let's go on to the rest of the features if we can, David. So of course, you can't have a product that isn't compatible and tested with all the leading media asset managers and backup and archive software products using S3 commands. So we had to make sure that was true. We prefer users working with high quality products like Archiware in doing this, but we realized that a lot of media asset managers will also need to access the cloud, and so we've tested compatibility with a number of these. We have some advanced features that, again, media-centric capabilities. We have advanced data logging, so you can take advantage of the cloud without any workflow changes. And like everything else, there's more detailed information on our website on all of this, because I know you don't want me to talk all day. I mentioned a little bit about our modern architecture. We find that in test, we're about 10 times faster than other cloud providers. That's when the data is internal, when it gets into our cloud. It's all object storage based, so there's a term called data durability, and you can see how many nines we have here in data durability. It's very safe and very secure. This gives you reliable and trusted operation. So when you're working in SymplyNEBULA, you never really have to worry about your content. And of course, you know, the best practices say you want to have content in 3 places. You want to have it in the cloud, you want to have it on-site and off-site. So nothing like having LTO and cloud together. So that's a quick run of SymplyNEBULA, and David's going to give us a little live demo of that in a little while. But let's talk about NAB really quickly. So we are at NAB. I mean, it's been a hiatus for a while. We're in the New North Hall in booth 1731. So we hope that you join us there.
And in fact, to find out how many people are planning on attending NAB, I'm just going to launch a poll in GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar. Are you attending NAB? So please tell us what your plans are there, and we'll reveal the results at the end. I can see lots of people clicking there already. Okay. So thanks ever so much, Alex. That was really good to see the hardware and to learn all about the tape and the cloud products. So I'm going to give everybody a quick overview of Archiware P5 and then we'll dive into a quick demo. This will be a really quick intro to P5. A lot of you may already be familiar. P5 is a software suite, so you can make a solution with P5 by adding lovely hardware like the hardware from Symply. We're providing a backup, archive, and synchronize workflows, where backup is a DR, taking a copy of your data for DR. P5 archive is long-term retention, and P5 synchronize is simply replicating. So you could use something like P5 synchronize to replicate between your camera card and an SSD drive in the piece of Symply hardware that you saw earlier. So I think everybody knows what a backup is. Yeah, it's copying your data so that you've got a disaster recovery position in case something terrible happens. You're running your backup against all of your storage because you need to get all of it back if you have a failure, and everybody needs a backup, or at least two backups, ideally, maybe one on-premise and one off-site, like a cloud backup. So you can achieve all of that to tape and cloud with P5, but we're suggesting that people working in the media space, they probably also want to be doing an archive if they're not already, and an archive is very much different from a backup, so don't confuse them. An archive is all about moving data offline into an archive, which could be an LTO or a cloud archive, as I just said. And this usually means completed work. So a lot of customers we find have a lot of jobs on their server that are quite old, that have been delivered. They can't be deleted because you might need to repurpose that footage, but they might need to be there in 2 years, but they don't need to be there today. So this is where you make a selection of completed work, take it offline, put it in the archive. You've still got it. You've got it for the long term because your archive media has a longer lifespan than the disk media, where it's currently living. But and you can manage this process. So with archive, you need to select what needs to be archived. It's not like a backup where you just back up everything every day. So we have different ways of doing that. You can do a manual selection in the browser by browsing your storage. You can have a hot folder, or we can integrate with media asset management products so that you can manage that archive process from within your MAM. And we think that media and broadcast companies, they need an archive. It's not a question of it's something that you should be looking at. If you don't already have an archive and you have the kinds of storage needed to do archiving, then you should really be looking at a piece of software like P5 to get that workflow up and running. USB disks, they're not an archive. They're cheap, they're big, they're just a couple of clicks away on Amazon, but they're not reliable. They don't last for 20 years like a tape does. They're not redundant. It's just one piece of data in one place. They're usually not off-site. They normally get left on a shelf somewhere where the primary storage exists. You can't search across all of these drives in any meaningful way to find that piece of work from 2017 that you archived. And generally speaking, it's not a professional solution. That's where P5 comes in. So P5 archive and backup, they can write their archive and backup data either to disks, but generally that's not such a good idea because your disks aren't long-term archive storage. The lifespan of a single drive mechanism is 6-7 years. So you're going to have to keep moving stuff onto fresher disks. Disks have bearings, they wear out and so on. So let's think about public cloud, something like SymplyNEBULA as an archive repository. That's great, it has the advantage that it's immediately off-site, so you don't need to worry about problems on-site destroying your data. Or LTO tape. So we support the single standalone drives that you've seen demoed today. We also support tape libraries or jukeboxes where you have a rack enclosure with many tapes and a robotic arm putting tapes in drives. We support all LTO generations, including LTO 9, which is the latest one. And we also support multiple drives in parallel. So if you've got a nice enclosure like the Symply with the 2 drives, you can use those to write in parallel to go faster or to give you redundancy. And we work with LTFS, which is the standard tape format for archiving, or we have our own P5 native archive format, which offers a few advantages over LTFS. So just a couple of slides to give some scenarios of using P5 on a host with the SymplyPRO LTO to start with. So here we have a host on the left-hand side. That could be Mac, Windows, Linux, Solaris even, Synology, QNAP. Pretty much anywhere you want to run us, we're going to run there. We're also bundled in with a lot of products. So you're running P5 on a host. There's the Thunderbolt 3 connection in the middle, and you've got a full height LTO 9 drive there that you can be archiving and backing up any storage attached to that host too. And you've got those two Thunderbolt ports and the daisy chaining possibilities with that device. But if we want to go a bit further, we could look at the Symply DIT LTO. And as I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the hardware, this allows you to do on-set archive and backup from disks in those two slots or cards directly to LTO9. So you can be making LTO9 copies of footage before you erase cards, or you could be copying cards to SSDs and tape all in one process using P5. So there's a huge amount of on-set DIT possibilities with that product. But P5 isn't just one host and one tape device. We run in a workgroup environment. So if you have a LAN, we can collect data across multiple hosts on that LAN and have a single host connected to the tape hardware that acts as effectively shares out that LTO drive to other hosts. So you could have lots of machines backing up and archiving and restoring from that shared tape drive that's effectively sitting on the LAN once you configure P5 in this way. And with this slide, I'm really just replacing the on-premise tape hardware with the Nebula Cloud and saying that with a WAN connection from this host on site, we have all of the same possibilities, but using the cloud storage where instead of the upfront cost, you're going to pay per gigabyte per month for that storage. And once you've archived something or backed up within P5, everything is available through a web interface, which looks exactly like this, and we'll see this in a sec. So what we're looking at here is a folder of AVI movie files, CCTV files in this instance, and what we're looking at is stuff that's been put on tape or now exists in the cloud, so it's no longer on primary storage, but within P5 we can see all of that archived material, we can see thumbnails, we have a playable proxy so you can actually view the file, and we can also capture metadata from the original file. Everything is browsable and searchable and playbackable, and when you've chosen some of these assets to recover back to disk, we know exactly which piece of cloud or which tape needs to be put in a drive to pull this stuff back. So to give you a bit more insight into how all this stuff fits together, let's just switch tabs, and I'm just going to log into one of my P5 installations. So P5 is all driven with a web browser interface, so you can do that from any host with a browser on it. And I'm going to begin by just showing you this local on this Mac P5 installation, where you can see I have my archive workflow configurable via this tab at the top, and under my storage manager I have a tape drive added here. So this is a Symply LTO drive, and it's so easy to set this up. Once you've connected your hardware, you're simply running this add drive wizard to go find any attached drives, and those will be added into P5, and then they will be available. Then all you need to do is provide your first tape in the drive, and you can see here I've got an LTO LTFS archive tape number 1, and we will initialize the tape as an LTFS tape for you. This will include a process whereby, specifically with LTO9, we wanted to tell you something a little special about LTO9. In order that we get the extra capacity on these tapes, there's an initialization process needed when a tape first comes out of the wrapper and goes in the drive. You need to allow some extra time to initialize that tape so that it can be used. It can be used securely. So this process can take 20-30 minutes up to 2 hours. So this isn't something that was happening with LTO 8 and 7 and backwards, but LTO 9 introduces this requirement. P5 manages this really well for you, so it will trigger the initialization. You just need to make sure you're allowing time for it. And a special feature with P5 that doesn't appear elsewhere is that if you reinitialize a tape, we don't need to provide that half-hour to 2-hour initialization process again. We can reformat a tape to effectively blank the tape off without the additional time being needed the second time around. So once you've got your tapes initialized and ready for use, you configure something called an archive plan, which looks like this, where you're basically targeting the storage pool that you want to store, where you want to store your archive. We can configure an auto archive, which is basically where you're providing a folder list of hot folders, and a scheduler saying every day at 10:30 in the evening, we'll go look for new work introduced to the folders that you've specified, and we'll archive it automatically, so you don't have to interact with this interface. In here also you will configure your preview generators for the kinds of media files that you're archiving, so you can view thumbnails and playback proxies, and also you configure your metadata capture. So we're running a little bit late, so I'm going to go a little bit quickly here. I'm going to switch to another P5 installation, which is actually running in AWS Cloud. The reason for doing that is this has a nice fast connection to the Nebula Cloud storage. And in here, I have configured under my storage manager, instead of a tape, I've configured my SymplyNEBULA bucket. So if you're familiar with S3 style cloud storage, the container into which you write data is called a bucket. So I've created a bucket here called P5 Nebula Test. There is actually a SymplyNEBULA UI available when you sign up for Nebula. That will, I've got to, excuse me, but I can't think and type, and I've probably got that wrong. No, I got it right. Okay, so I'm just quickly going to log into my SymplyNEBULA account, where I can see that P5 Nebula Test bucket, and I can configure that in here by, sorry, I've gone into the bucket, but I can set the bucket up by going into the settings, and I can do things like enable object lock, which means that everything becomes immutable and can't be altered, which is a great kind of ransomware backup protection piece of config. So yeah, you get this SymplyNEBULA admin console where you can create your buckets, and then back in P5, you just set those buckets up. You only need one by providing the credentials that Nebula gives you to access the bucket. And then in here, you can test compatibility, and this will get P5 to create files in the Nebula storage and delete files and apply metadata and make sure all the different features that we need via the S3 protocol are working fine. And then you'll get a bunch of ticks back there to tell you that everything is good. And then just to give an example of doing some live archiving, I've got those CCTV movies in this folder here. So this is live storage that I'm browsing via just a hierarchical browser, pretty standard. I can choose a folder, add it to my archive selection, which shows up in this palette. So I can build a list of the work that I've decided I want to archive today to this cloud storage. I simply hit the archive button, hit the start button, and then I can monitor progress of archiving a couple of gigabytes worth of CCT movies to the cloud, and you'll be able to see how fast we're going in terms of how quickly we're able to pump that data up to the cloud. Earlier today we were getting about 120 megabytes a second, so we should see some stats in here once it's settled down. And you can see so far we're just coming up to the first gigabyte that we've written to that cloud storage. So of course, you know, how long is it going to take to archive my data to the cloud really depends on how fast your internet connection is. Now, once this is finished, we're able to restore stuff from the cloud or from tape via the restore button. So if I go into my CCTV archive, so this is stuff that we archived a little earlier today in our European version of this webinar, you can see all of these CCTV files. You can see the thumbnails, and if I click on one of these, we pull up the properties window where you can see a playable, in this case, 15-second proxy. This is designed purely so that you can see the media file, whether it's audio, just a graphic, or a movie, and determine that this is the file that you're really looking for before you recover it back to disk from the cloud storage. Okay, so I'm going to end my demo there. And if I just flick back to our slides, the next couple of slides are purely giving you reminders of our website and the fact that P5 being software, you're entitled to a 5 or 30-day evaluation. You should speak to your local sales partner about that via this URL here. And we have gosimply.com as your point of access for information on the Symply products. And I think that gets us to our question section, guys. So at this point, we were going to, well, first of all, let me feed back the results of the NAB poll. So we have fairly even split, actually. We've got 30%, 36% saying yes, 36% saying maybe, and the remaining 27% saying no. So I think that's quite a good result, guys, because you've got like 2/3 of people.
I think, David,
maybe
you win the bet, don't you?
Yeah, that's it.
Who wins the bet?
Yeah, it was higher than you guys thought it was going to be. So yeah. Well, I'm not going, so have a good show. Did we
just to say, obviously, that Archiware are in North Hall as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we are in N625. Sorry, I was going to make a slide and publish that, but we'll put that in the email that we send out to everybody. Now, I've not looked in the question box so far, but I can see we have some questions. And let me go through some of these questions. So let's just go straight into a question from Mickey, who is asking, which manufacturers do you directly work with? So that's one for you guys, I think.
Go ahead, Nick.
If you want to reveal your secrets.
Well, we obviously have an OEM agreement with a tape drive manufacturer. There is only one tape drive manufacturer that now makes LTO 7, 8, and 9 drives. So unfortunately, as our OEM contract dictates, we can't disclose that, but I'm sure the clever ones amongst you would be able to work it out.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the interface technology, a partner we have as well? I think we did a press release on that, so it should be pretty easy.
Yes. So when we were designing our systems, we obviously tested numerous kind of SAS chip providers. Obviously, they're internally in these things. There's a SAS chip which bridges from the tape drive to the Thunderbolt, our Thunderbolt technology in there. And we have a very long-standing relationship with ATO, and I think their support for especially the Mac platform, Alex, what goes back 20+ years or something. I mean, you've known the CEO of ATO for an extremely long time. So there was really only one logical choice when we come to, some of the manufacturers that we deal with in the system. So yeah, ATO are a key partner of ours, and again, their support is I feel is second to none, and they back us up as well. So
okay. Mickey also asked, which manufacturer do you use for your enclosures? But I think that might be a bit of an inside question, maybe. Oh
no, I'm happy. We manufacture all our enclosures ourselves. So everything that you see here is designed by Symply for Symply. So we manufacture in different locations around the world, but everything is our design. It's our IP. So none of these products that you see here are available by any other vendor. So they're completely unique to Symply.
Yeah, which is great, because we were talking a little bit earlier about the kind of low end tape libraries where you've got like a 2U or a 1U with just 8 slots, and saying that most of the vendors selling those products are actually there's a single version of that product that different people are badging and adding different firmware to, but it's basically the same. It's the same.
Yeah, in terms of the autoloader and library market, there's a German manufacturer that people may or may not know of, and they supply a lot of the larger manufacturers. So, but all this sort of stuff is our own IP, our own design, and so as Alex was alluding to, we only use the highest quality components, internal power supplies, and medical grade. The fans are, as Alex said, are larger. They're spun slower, to move a lot of air, but very quietly.
Yeah.
What a lot of people don't realize.
Question on that one.
I was going to say, a lot of people don't realize a lot of these enclosures were designed initially for discs. They weren't even designed for tape, and so from a quality standpoint, they've just cost reduced these down to where they're not specialized for this, and tape requires some speciality in how it actually moves air and does other things. So that's why we had to go from the ground up to really design these.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we actually have a question on that topic from Mohammed, who's asking how noisy is the cooling. So yeah, I mean, I've got one of these devices here with me, and it replaced an older unit from a different vendor. I can say that the fan is way quieter than the other one was. The other fan was really annoying to have in a small room with me doing demos. It was always difficult to speak over in webinars. So that this is a webinar friendly device, I'd say. You can have it switched on. It's the drive mechanism when it's winding that makes most of the noise, but the cooling is pretty quiet.
There's one running on my desk right now as well. I can pull the tape out of it. If you can't hear it in the background while we're running the webinar, I'm surprised.
Here's some clicking noises.
We use all our fans on the desktop. They're engineered by a company in Austria, Nocta. So if you're PC gamers and those kind of guys, you've probably heard of maybe Nocta. They're pretty much recognised as one of the forefront of sort of quiet fans you know, in terms of the quality of design, the amount of air they move, and the sort of low noise that they generate.
Rolls-Royce of fans, as we would say in the UK.
Indeed. Rolls-Royce of fans.
Bill is asking which codecs are supported for previews in P5, so I can answer that. We're basically using the FFmpeg open source for media files, and we use another open source package called ImageMagick. So those two pieces of open source software are very heavily used throughout the media and entertainment sort of broadcast software space. We're no different. We use those. They're embedded in the product, so you don't need to install them. And they support pretty much all of the media codecs, with the exception of a few proprietary ones, but you don't have to use FFmpeg. So if you have a binary that you can call via a simple batch file or shell script, then you can make that work within P5. So if you've got some software that will generate a preview from a file, you can do that within P5 is the long and the short. Bruce is asking which LTO generations are supported by P5. So that's easy. We support LTO 1, 2, 3, ... 9, plus older tape techs from the olden days like AIT. We do actually have some customers that get in touch quite frequently with old tapes that were pre-LTO with data on, and they're getting hold of drives and getting data off of really old tapes, and then, you know, taking a couple of billion AIT1 tapes and putting it all on one LTO8, that kind of thing. So from my side, I don't see any more questions in the box, and we did overrun a bit so far with all of our enthusiasms for what we're talking about. So if you guys are happy with that, then I think we'll call it a wrap. Thank everybody for showing up.
Yes, thanks for the participation, everybody. Thanks for the questions and the polling for those of you going to NAB. We look forward to seeing you there. And I'd like just to extend my thanks for David and Archiware for helping us arrange this. Much appreciated, David.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Look forward to doing it again sometime.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks,
Nick.
Thanks, everyone.
Enjoy the rest of your day.